large firm as the CIO and CTO. I've been involved in any number of programs that involve that intersection of business and technology. I spent about a decade in the business process outsourcing space. But today, I'm talking to you as an entrepreneur. I have a startup as well. It has about 20 people in it. And what we're doing is building a platform called OneLink that attempts to look at the problem of how do we get small to mid-sized companies an operating platform so that they can run their company like a big company would run it and get prepared for the growth that may ensue. Next chart. So what are the trends? What are the trends in the market? So in one sense, the market is aligning with what we see, happening. We commissioned a study with Carnegie Mellon University, and one of the things that they told us as a result of kind of looking at this is that by 2027, you're going to have a workforce where over half of the workforce is freelancers. And so we can start to see that trend happening now in terms of the shared office space growth, the growth of companies like WeWorks and MindSpace. That trend is real, and I don't think you're going to put that genie back in the box. And so that's going to be helpful in terms of attracting talent. But I think on the other side is how do you now integrate that talent? Because people are going to want to hang out their shingles. If you look at the millennials, I think when I go on campus and I start talking to people who are starting their careers, I almost always hear, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to do a startup. And so I think that's going to be a reality for them. The other thing that's happening, I think people are working a lot longer. And you look at the older workforce, they have skills, they have talent, and they're going to work a lot longer. How do you really tap into that, trend to be able to leverage it in a way that's helpful to your organization? Next chart. So you've got a good idea, but in order to make that good idea come to life, you need some luck. There's some things that you don't control. You need some luck. You need good timing. But there are some things that you do control. And the things that you do control is how do you look at attracting those people to you. Initially, the good idea might be in an incubator. You might go to a shared workspace and you have other people who are like-minded who can potentially contribute to helping you flush out your ideas. But eventually it gets to the point where you now start to have to grow a real company. And it goes from you at the center with the good idea to now being able to build out a group of people around you who can help you operationalize that. And when you need those kinds of people, when you start to look at that challenge, there's going to be certain skills that you need. Obviously, you need HR people, you need legal people, you need a whole cadre of skills that maybe you don't possess in order to really be successful and build a company. And then as the size of your staff grows and as you take on more complex things, you also need to grow your internal controls. And so you're now going from, yes, I've got a good idea, to now I have a company I can operate and sustain, and I can meet some of the compliance requirements that are required. And growth always requires being able to take some risks from the standpoint of you're going to bring people into your organization potentially that you've never worked with before. how do you make sure that they can perform? And if you get to a point where they're not performing, how do you do it in a way that you can offboard those people in a successful professional way? So there's certainly challenges in dealing with the trends. The trend in terms of how people want to work and how the workforce is being organized certainly is in our favor. But we have some other things that we have to deal with. Next chart. So what are some of the approaches to meeting these challenges? How do we, how can we really get the talent that we need? And again, on this chart, it's certainly not all of the approaches, but some of the more common ones. So one of the ways is going out to looking at a job sharing. You might be in a situation where because you can't afford or you can't find the talent that you need, you take pieces of talent. And eventually, through maybe a couple of people in a particular role, you kind of get what you need done. The other approach is, if you're a little further along and you need particular expertise, maybe in finance or in legal, you can go out into the market and kind of rent an executive. And I've certainly done that for companies. And that's a common trend as well. I think there are a couple of websites, out there where I can rent I can rent a CFO, right? That's a pretty popular trend. The other thing that we see in how people are dealing with this challenge is looking at marketplaces. And marketplaces may be this place where you can go and look at what are some of the requirements for particular opportunities. And typically there are short-term kinds of opportunities. Companies post their requirements there. And then you can basically take on one of those assignments, be on a short schedule with those companies, and then be able to take the next assignment. So it allows you the ability to have visibility into a series of short-term assignments. There are some drawbacks in those kinds of opportunities, because what they do is they give you the opportunity to see many ways to be able to help companies, and you have exposure, but they don't really allow you to successfully integrate those people into your operation. And so the integration issue is still there. I mean, you still have, that challenge to deal with. But it's a start in terms of finding, the talent. And there are some common websites out there that do those kinds of functions. Next chart. So what are some of the ways that we might integrate people into the organization? Well, I think when we talk about integration, we're talking about how do we leverage technology? How does technology come into play? So I now have found the talent that I need, and I now need to look at how do I bring those people in and make them productive members of my workforce. And so what we're seeing in the market is there are lots of point solutions. Some of the bigger companies have suites of tools that you can use that will allow you to be able to do that, to do that integration. Google and Microsoft have product offerings. And also, you can develop ways to, homegrown ways to be able to, integrate those workers into your environment as well. What we are seeing, though, is these loosely coupled ways put a lot of stress on the organization, because you have to deal with a lot of technology issues, deal with how do you build the right kind of internal controls, and figure out how to effectively integrate the people into the organization. And so there's some drawbacks in terms of the approaches that are out there today. Next chart. So the challenging with some of the existing technology is if you look at what's available, and then you look at, really, what do you need and what's available, there are solutions out there that can address, these problems. But in a lot of cases, there are pluses and minuses. If you look at, kind of the landscape of the marketplace, some of them have a high operating costs. Some of them are lengthy to implement. There might be cases where you're unable to effectively scale it because you need on-premise, capability, and you don't have the IT support staff to be able to deal with those types of solutions. And so what we've done through the work that we have, commissioned and done, is we have kind of developed a way of looking at this to kind of allay people in different quadrants. And what we think is very important is you have a set of features and functions that will address the integration issue, but you also have the ability to make it affordable for a small business. And the only plug that I'm going to kind of do for AtWork is that's the approach that we have taken. And so if you look at the platform that we're delivering in the market, it is full feature enterprise capability, but we've miniaturized it to make it affordable for a small business. And we've thought about how the workforce is going to be working over the next decade and built in features so that it's fully capable of integrating folks who are going to participate in the gig economy. As we looked at some of the existing solutions that are in the market, a lot of them were built with the view that all of the employees were going to be inside of the organization, and we know as we see things evolving that that's just not going to be the case. Next chart. So what do you need and kind of what's available? Again, the trend is there for the growth of the freelancing, workforce. And so the way I look at this is you're going to have a virtual workforce. I mean, I think when you start early on in your career, it's going to be a necessity because you're just not going to be able to afford the expertise that you need to be able to get up and running. But even as you evolve as a company, there's still going to be the need for some percentage of your workforce to be virtual. You need a way to find those people. So you need some kind of a service marketplace, a way to go to look for them, make sure that they've been vetted, that you're not taking on too much risk of hiring somebody you don't know and giving them a key task that they can't really afford to fail at because it's critical to your mission. And then you need a way to integrate them into the organization. And so what you want to be able to do is to treat those people who are part of that virtual workforce as though they were your virtual employees, and so that you can integrate them directly, into your organization. You can manage, the tasking, you can manage the security, you can manage the access to information that they have, and so there's very little difference between how you integrate them and how you would treat them as employees versus the outside, consultants. Next chart. So what should you look for to kind of address this issue? And so technology is going to have to be part of how you address this issue. And just, some things that I think would be helpful for you to look for. The ability to have a virtual org, so that you truly can bring your supplier community together in one organization that allows you to be able to collaborate with those people very, very easily. Obviously, people are going to be working anytime, anywhere. Mobile is going to be important. The trend, I think, for a lot of the millennials, especially if you look at things that they would do in the e-market space, they do everything on their phones. And so a platform that will allow you to operate your business on a phone and be able to tie those people in would be very helpful as well. Internal controls. Now, if you're a 5-person company, probably doesn't matter. You, as the entrepreneur, are working enough hours. You have your finger on the pulse. You know what's going on in your business. But when you get to be 50 people, when you get to be 100 people, when you get to be a couple of hundred people, and now you need to integrate, your team, it becomes much harder to know everything that's going on. And some of it, you then have to rely on the technology to help you leverage those internal controls. And so you need a platform that will help you with that as well. And then obviously an easy way to share information. And you can't open up all of the information that's inside of your company. We're talking about being able to restrict who can see what from the standpoint of just having the right people be able to get access to the information that they need to know. And so that's going to be an important requirement. And then to prepare for this, to prepare for leveraging this, you need a fair amount of digitization. And so if somebody's in a role where they're going to act as a project manager for you, they need to be able to have real-time insight as to what's going on that project. And so now you've got to have spent some time digitizing, that particular function. Or if they're going to be a contract manager for you, then in order for you to really effectively work with that person, there are pieces of that functionality that have to be online so that you and them kind of have the same view of what's going on. So we look at what are some of the emerging trends in the market, and I think if you look at what's come in the last probably 5 to 7 years is really an influx of solutions around addressing this problem. None of them completely addresses the issue of the gig economy, because again, a lot of the solutions were focused on the worker as somebody inside of a monolithic, organization. And so, but I characterize the solutions kind of in 3 buckets. Obviously, you can address the integration issue through a set of bespoke, standalone solutions. That puts a lot of work on your plate as the entrepreneur to now find the package that works for you and then be able to integrate it effectively into a holistic solution. There are integrated solutions, that don't address the emerging workforce trend. And so that creates some challenges for you as well in terms of being able to now deal with that. And then you can look at it from the standpoint of there are large solutions out there that are more focused with a feature set that are aimed at large enterprises. And so the challenge with those types of solutions is they don't become affordable for a small business. Just the cost of implementing them and sustaining them is out of the reach of a small business. And so what you really need in this kind of emerging market is, or in this middle market, is pieces from all of these approaches, but it has to be affordable for a small business. It has to be easily configurable. You can't take months or years to implement it as you do with some of the larger solutions. And it has to scale as you grow. And so you take pieces that you need based on where you are in your business life cycle, If it's just HR and payroll, because that's where you are, then you have those particular components. But then as you grow, you may want to add, the other capability. And so that becomes very important. Okay? Next chart. So in conclusion, yeah.
Are you taking questions?
I will. Give me one more slide, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we've talked a number of times about the emerging trends in the market, and there's a necessity for a startup to be able to integrate service providers and people who are participating in the gig economy. There's no way around it. You need it to be successful. But how do you do it? What are the things that you have to do? And I think you have to step back and kind of look at how do you prepare to integrate those people, and that requires making some decisions about how you digitize certain aspects of your organization, because that's going to facilitate the way you need to operate with them. Then you need to be able to find those people. Find them, know how to vet them, know how to onboard them, know how to offboard them if they don't, kind of work out. But the reaching out and finding them is going to be an important, part of solving this particular problem. And then the last aspect is how do you integrate? How do you make sure that you basically can have them work in a way that is on mission for what it is that you got to do, and you're not treating them very differently than the way you would treat your internal employees. And so they now can be productive members of your workforce. Okay? That's really all I wanted to, talk about in terms of just the formal presentation. I would like to open it up for question and answer. That I know you have a question.
My question was, when you talked about trends in different types of technologies like cloud, etc., what's your perspective on open source and its utilization in commercial enterprises?
I think certainly open source is going to play an important role. I think with Microsoft's bet on the GitHub, that I think they see it as an important component for them as well in terms of moving forward. I look at the platform that we have built, and one of the things that I was very, set on as a software architect is getting to a different price point. Building an enterprise class capability, but delivering it at a different price point. One of the ways that I've been able to do that is very heavily leverage open source technology. Right.
Talk a little bit about vetting. Vetting is not trivial. How do you vet your people? How do you communicate that to your customers? And also, how do you keep them? Because if I need them 6 months from now, I want that same guy.
Yeah. So let me answer. I think there's lots of approaches. There's probably not a right or wrong answer to this, but let me just talk about it specifically with what we've done in our marketplace, and at least that'll help share the perspective that I have. And so I think when you look at vetting, what you want is something that is not only the perspective of the person who's actually, engaged that person, but you also want a market of, is that a good resource to be able to bring, into your organization. And so I think when you look at, somebody as a consultant, it's important that you have some sense of how other people have rated their performance. And so it's now kind of self-leveling. And so what we do is we allow people to engage people through the marketplace. There's a rating that that person who engaged them can give them, there's a rating that they can give the employer as well. And over time, you would think and you would hope that the market would level itself out such that you can use that system to be able to effectively say whether somebody is good at what they do or they're bad at what they do. And yes, it is a tough issue to solve, but I think you have to have market perspective in order to do that with. Yes.
But what's the advantage of staying?
Well, again, I think about your own kind of aspirations and what it is that drives you. I think if you have the kind of challenges and the kind of work that people and you're solving the kinds of problems that people want to be engaged in solving, I think that goes a long way in being able to retain those people. And then there's a whole set of other intangible benefits in terms of whether you're going to retain them or not. Flexibility in the work schedule becomes, very, very important. Letting them work where it is they want to work, but also making sure that they're productive when they're doing that. I have a fair number of people, who they're very talented, but they don't want to be in the office every day. They don't want to spend the time, commuting. And so for them, giving them the flexibility to be able to say, I know you can be productive because we've now set up ourselves to be able to integrate you very effectively into our organization. And so if you only want to be in the office 2 days a week, then we can make that work. That goes a long way to retaining them. Right. Yeah. Other questions?
You're talking specifically about your work and creating a marketplace within your organization to attract more people on a temporary basis. What about to the core functions, HR, legal? Are there marketplaces out there where you can tap resources? I know there are like large groups of like attorneys, etc. that but is it a place where you can find independent people?
Yeah, there are sites like Shuram that have certified HR professionals. What we're trying to do through our marketplace is be able to allow people to come in, and register themselves as professionals in certain areas that you need to run the office. And so you could be finance, or you could be a procurement person, or an HR person. And then you as a company can come in and become a user of the product. You now have access to all of those resources. And we allow you to be able to integrate those resources in a very effective way.
I have another question though.
No, go ahead. I don't see any other hands, so.
So how do you control international people reaching out? And do you have expertise to work with every country and their regulations and taxing them, or do you limit the people?
Right now, our plan is U.S. But we've built our platform in a way, as we gain momentum in the market, to be able to take it to other markets. Yeah.
Basically, you're trying to take, like, let's say I do Zoom video conferencing using the software for client attendance. I use all these different customization packages, and basically you're going to help me pull it all together.
I'm doing more than that. So yes, if you look at the suite of applications, and again, I apologize for talking about our platform, but it is everything you need in the back office: payroll, HR, the finance, all the collaboration tools. We have Zoom built into the platform. Okay, and so you don't have to go out, but you take what you need. You don't have to buy the whole thing. Okay. But the other thing that we have done, which I think is very unique, is we have built the product on top of an enterprise workflow platform. And that enterprise workflow platform is smart about how to interact with the virtual org. And the people who are in your virtual org, you have 5 types of users that could be in your virtual org. Obviously, you could have employees, you can have your subcontractors and your consultants. You can actually bring your customers in and give them access to certain functions as well, so they can look at the things that they need. Now, as far as, we've done a lot of work in terms of market survey and looking at this. I've had Carnegie Mellon look at it. Right now, if you look at the traditional enterprise platforms, they don't have this particular, they don't cover it. They don't cover the end-to-end. And so that's what, but we know, if you look at the trends in the market, it's, the market is moving very quickly to, people wanting to come into, especially the high-skilled people, coming into hanging out their own shingle. Yeah, right. Okay.
What if your project requires multiple skill sets? Say you need a website and you need a designer and a developer and a copywriter.
And you
Offer any suggestions for how to find and vet people that can work together?
I think today the challenge would be, you now have to, if you want to do that, you now as an organization have to, grow some project management skills so that you can be at the center of kind of integrating those people so that they can work together. There are solutions out there. What's the company in London or in the UK that we looked at as we were doing our Blur? So there are solutions out there like Blur that give you the view of, I now am going to create kind of an integrated project management site. I'm going to pull resources from many different places, and then they take the role of being the integrator. So I've been around for a while. I mean, I think that has its, its pros and cons. I think if that's part of the DNA of your company, and that's really what you need to be successful, then you don't have any choice, in my opinion, about building some expertise inside of your company so that you can actually do some of that integration.
There are project management companies like E and others that geared towards allowing the projects. Some are more open.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, just a pitch for what we have built. We have built a project management capability. I think it is oriented towards companies that may be a little bigger than just a startup, because it allows you to define all of the resources that you need, any number of resources, and then be able to build an integrated project plan that everybody can see, and then allow you to be able to let those resources work where it's most appropriate for them to work, and then status the project. Right. So if you were to look at some of the enterprise solutions that are in the market today, there's lots of different models, but the model that's most often used for large corporations is an enterprise license, and then a fair amount of customization to be able to customize it. You could be in the tens of millions of dollars to implement one of those types of solutions in your environment. And obviously, that's not going to be appropriate for a small business, right? Yeah, and for a startup. There are solutions that are a la carte, meaning, and we sort of fit into that camp, where you look at payroll and HR and project management, contract management, procurement, and you take the module that you need, and you now spend a small, kind of monthly fee on a per user basis. And so now you can get to a much more attractive, price point. And so when I was in the role as a CIO, I implemented SAP. And so there was a pretty heavy, customization fee. But at the end of the day, we wound up paying a per user license as well, which, was, multiple thousands of dollars a year per user. That's just not going to play. That's just not going to work for someone who's kind of in the early stages, right? We're trying to come in. We're trying to come in at all in at less than $1,000 a user, all in. So the whole platform, marketplace, payroll, HR, procurement, $1,000 a user.
Right, but if you use, $1,000
Per
freelancer that you use,
per user. No,
member of your company that uses.
per member of your company. You can use as many freelancers as you want. Now, if those people become users of the platform, then you pay the licensing fee for them.
Oh, the freelancers are counted as users.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you mean customers are users and freelancers are users?
Anybody that comes in and uses the platform, they pay for it, but you're not going to give them the whole platform. Yeah. Yeah, you might only give them the BI tool, which is like $7 a month.
Is that a one-time fee or is it every year?
It's a subscription fee.
Is what, every year or every month?
It's a yearly fee. I want to make sure you understand. So let's say I've got a suite of applications that you're using inside the company. You need to give HR, the HR system, and payroll. But for some of your users, you only want them to do timesheets, and you only want them to do project status. Well, they just pay for what they're using, and so they don't pay the whole freight.
So it's $1,000 a month plus
All in.
$50 or whatever tools the.
No. It's just if you give a user access to everything, that's the $1,000 a month. If you say, I've got some freelancers and I want the freelancer to have access to timesheet and I want them to be able to status the project, that's like less than that. Yeah. And so the other thing that I want to make sure, as we're talking about the pricing issue, is obviously we're a startup as well. And so we're trying to get market share. And for the startups, we've come up with these bundles of what makes sense. So if you're starting, you probably want HR, you probably want time and expense, and you probably need payroll. And so we've created a bundle, and that bundle could start as low as $2,400 a year. So a small business can afford that. Right. Go ahead. I didn't think I'd get as many questions on pricing, but that covers 5 users. 5 users. So that's to me that's a very attractive price for what. Right.
You've done obviously a lot of market research around your target market. Can you talk a little bit to your target market, how you identified it first of all, and then what process did you go through to validate? We talked about price points. Let's put that to one side. But validate that for a 5-person company, 2,400 makes sense, or if it's a 1,000-person company, X makes sense, right?
So let's deal with the market research. Let's deal with the market research first. And so that's an ongoing process, obviously. But I think it starts with the backgrounds of the principals of the company, their 4 partners. And most of us have spent 2 decades in the business process outsourcing space. So we come from the standpoint of having been inside of lots of organizations and having to pull together lots of different teams. And so what we did was we also brought the universities into it, and so we commissioned a couple of studies and a couple of focus groups with Carnegie Mellon University. And I don't know whether people realize this or not, but you have Stanford out on the West Coast that's become the engine for kind of innovative, IT. Carnegie Mellon has become the East Coast engine, and so they're really cranking up in high gear, and lots of very talented people. And so we went there, and kind of worked with their research community, and what they did in the initial study is we described the platform to them, and then we said we need some help and some work with you guys to help us look at what the market segments are that would be most helpful for us to approach. And they came up with the answer: professional services, engineering services, and construction companies. And so that makes the most sense. I had personally spent a lot of time in the mergers and acquisition space, and I think our platform has something very unique to offer for people who they made a lot of money at some point, and now what they do is they act as portfolio managers. They go and they basically just buy companies, roll them up, and sell companies, right? And so our platform has something to offer for them to help them with that process. And so I'm certainly targeting that market as well.
So in addition to identifying your market segment, how did you also use that type of analysis to identify your prioritization of future
Yeah, we have a product manager who's sitting right there. Who's sitting right there. He's been at it for 2 years, looking at comparable products and feature sets and pricing points and where do we enter the market. And so yes, there's a whole lot of data we could share with you there.
So I want to talk about my experience by using the freelancers on this, and I'm having these two problems really consistently, and I want to hear your opinion on how I can address that, right? So I think the first issue that I was having is the vetting, right? You have to explain what your problem you're trying to solve and work with. And the second problem is having them stay committed to my project, because for freelancers it provides flexibilities by working at their own home and etc. But they also pick and choose. Like whoever pays more, and those good ones are popular, right? So whoever pays more, they'll just jump to the other project and just tell me that, hey, I'm sorry, but I can't work with you. And I've had that kind of numerous times, and it just I spend so much time vetting them, working with them, explaining to them about my goals and whatnot, and they're kind of getting it, and then we're kind of making through. So I wonder how it for me, I understand money's money, right? If somebody pays more, you can go, but how I can do that, how I can fix it
And so obviously I don't have the answer. I just have an opinion for this. I think looking at the problem from two perspectives, I think there's a qualitative perspective, and then there's the dollars and cents perspective. So if somebody is high skilled, a very talented web designer, and you have that particular problem you want them to solve, with you, then from the qualitative perspective, you've got to at least kind of be in the ballpark in terms of how you are compensating them. And so you can't expect them to come to work for you for something less than maybe what they could earn in the market. So let's set that aside. The qualitative part of it, though, is I think from the perspective of what did the market say about their talent? Is there a way for you to get at how the market has vetted them? Is there some other place where they could go and have registered themselves, and you can read what other people have said about their talent? I think that's important. I think the other thing that becomes very important is there has to be a meeting of the minds in terms of the mission that you have and the problem that you are trying to solve and their interests. If you're misaligned there, if there's not a meeting of the minds there, then they're just doing it for the dollars. And that's, I think that's always going to be, they're going to jump to the next highest bidder. And so that becomes a process that you have to, I think, develop and internalize yourself as to how do you get at that? How do you get at whether this person that I need to bring into my organization really cares about the kind of problem that I have and want to solve? I spend a lot of time on that in the interviewing process when I'm looking at resources. Right.
So when you talk about reviews on people, this is interesting, kind of, because this has always been the challenge of any hiring professional. As you bring people in, is how do you vet them? Classically, you interview like you talked about. So are you thinking that you look at people's social media presence? Because in this world of defamation, people can't really review other people. Or is it things like LinkedIn recommendations where it's kind of really difficult territory.
Yeah. I think that it is a combination of things that you have to do. And where we're trying to head with our marketplace is to be able to have, a starring system like you would have in
Like a credit score.
yeah. Yeah. Now, the other thing that we're contemplating, we haven't done this, is, but there are sites out there that do this, is some kind of a competency assessment. Yeah. And obviously, that takes work to be able to get, that in place. But if you're bringing somebody in to be an accountant, I mean, you want to know that they are a competent accountant. And so, in some areas, the market will tell you that they have the certification that says they're really good, in this particular area. You have to rely on that. But I think there's no substitute for having kind of a market assessment as well. And we're trying to embed that into the marketplace. Yeah.
When you talk about market assessment, like you said, you have to be LinkedIn, otherwise they might have checked the website where you get the information in terms of market assessment references.
I think for now, I think you got to piece that together. I think you got to go to places like LinkedIn. You got to see what's been published about that person out on social media. Certainly, you got to do some Google, market research on them to kind of figure out what's out there in the public, domain. What I am trying to do with just one of the modules in our platform is try to make that a little easier, so that as people take assignments, they can also get an evaluation. You can give them 1 to 5 stars in terms of how they did on that assignment. And then over time, if they take a number of assignments through the marketplace, they will get a score. They will care about the score because they will want to get other assignments, in that market.
I think we have to ask you to go to the next event.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate you guys coming, and certainly the Q&A was very good. Thank you.
If people have questions about pricing, I feel a little bit
Very interesting.